Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter evolution. This is the part 3 of the lecture, and today we'll be discussing the NCERT section 6.4 and 6.5. So this is the disclaimer. Now let's understand what are the objectives of today's session. So first we'll talk about adaptive radiation, and we'll also understand the role of adaptive radiation in species diversification. And we'll understand adaptive radiation with a very classical example of Darwin finches. We'll also talk about the concept of biological evolution. Within this, we'll be talking about natural selection and its relationship with organism lifespans. We'll also talk about the differences, and we will contrast Lamarck's theory of acquired characteristics with Darwin theory of natural selection. So, we are going to study adaptive radiation today, which is NCERT section 6.4. Then we'll talk about biological evolution. Then we'll summarize this entire lecture. We'll also discuss some NCERT-based questions which are related to these topics. We'll also discuss some keynotes that will have some interesting information for you. In the end, there will be some interesting questions that will enhance your critical thinking ability. So let's begin with today's session. Today we'll be talking about adaptive radiation. Let's first understand how can you define adaptive radiation. See, this is a process of evolution. So it's a mechanism by which species evolve and adapt to new environment. And this leads to increased biodiversity. Okay. So, as I have told you, this adaptive radiation leads to evolution of different kind of species. So, when you see around, there are a lot of species around you. There are a lot of biodiversity. Okay, so these species, they are adapting to their particular geographical area. They are adapting to their particular environment. Clear? So this process involves evolution of different species in a given geographical area. So it's a fascinating example of how life can adapt and thrive in diverse conditions. Now, the evolution starts from a point and radiates to other areas of geography or habitats. Now, this spreading out is a key characteristic of adaptive radiation. And this illustrates how species can colonize new areas. Okay, now let's talk about some key reasons for adaptive radiation. Okay, first is new environment or niche. Whenever it becomes available, then what happens? So a new environment or niche becomes available, and this provides opportunities for the species to explore and to adapt to that new environment. So this is very critical factor that drives the process of adaptive radiation. Okay, availability of new environment or niche. This drives the process of adaptive radiation, or you can say evolution of a new species. Now, this availability of new niche provides opportunities for a species to diversify. Okay, so it is a kind of invitation for the species to evolve and fill different ecological roles. Alright, this is clear. Now let's understand adaptive radiation with an example of Darwin finches. Okay, so it is a primary example of adaptive radiation. Here. So Darwin observed a variety of small black birds at the Galapagos Islands during his sea voyage by HMS Beagle. So these birds, they are known as Darwin finches. Clear? So there was adaptation in the beak size and shape of these birds. Okay. Now, these birds were later recognized as Darwin finches. Clear? So these Darwin finches, they had different beak size and shape. Clear? So this adaptation in the beak size and shape was because of the, you can say, the food which they were eating. Clear? It was a kind of adaptation to the availability of the food. And all these finches, they evolved in the Galapagos Island. Okay. Now, what was the observation made by Darwin? So, Darwin observed a variety of finches at Galapagos Islands. So, variety of finches means these finches, they varied in their beak size and shape. Okay. All of these finches, they evolved on the island itself. Okay. Now, let's talk about the evolution process of these Darwin finches. Okay, which is an example of adaptive radiation. Okay. Now, the original finch, okay, original bird, it was seed eating. So the original seed eating finch arrived on the island from the mainland. Then what happened? They diversified to occupy different ecological niches. Clear? Then what happened? Over time, they evolved to many different varieties with altered beaks. So all these different varieties had different kind of beaks. Okay. Now, this altered beaks enabled these finches to become insectivorous and vegetarian. Initially, the original Darwin finch that was seed eating. Now, due to adaptation in the beak, what happened? Now they become insectivorous and some became vegetarian as well. So this is an image showing you Darwin finches. You can see here there is a variety of beaks of finches. Okay, you can see the size and the shape of the beak is different. Okay, so this helped these birds to become insectivorous or vegetarian. Okay, so let's move on. Now, what was the conclusion? So conclusion is that adaptive radiation is a key process in the evolution. And all these different species, all these different fin species, they evolved from a single ancestral species. Clear? So there was a common ancestor to all these finches. And they diversified from this common ancestral species. Okay, they were adapting to their environment. Okay, adaptive radiation means what? All these different species, they adapted to their environment and they developed certain traits which helped them to survive in that environment. Clear? So, these finches, they were radiating from a common ancestor. Okay. Now, the radiation of finches with altered beak from a single ancestral seed eating illustrate how species adapt to their environment. All of these finches, they were adapted to their particular environment. Okay, they evolved from a common ancestor. They are radiating from a common ancestor. They are descendants of a common ancestor, which are adapted to their particular environment. Now, this evolution occurred in a given geographical area, which was Galapagos Island. Okay. So Galapagos Island is a unique geographical area that facilitated this process. Now this represents adaptive radiation of Darwin finches. So Darwin finches is a very classical example of adaptive radiation. Okay, this is an image showing you, you can say, different kind of beaks in Darwin finches. Now let's talk about adaptive radiation in Australian marsupials. Okay, so let's talk about this. Now, a number of marsupials, each different from the other, evolved from an ancestral stock. Means again there was a common ancestor. Now this highlights the power of evolution in creating diversity. Okay. Now all of these marsupials evolved within the Australian island continent. So Australia, it is an isolated area. So this demonstrates the role of geographical isolation in the evolution of the marsupials. Okay. This also represents adaptive radiation, and there is a question in your textbook, question number 8, which is related to this topic, adaptive radiation. Okay, so we can say adaptive radiation is a key concept in understanding how species diversify and adapt to new environments. Here you can see there was a common ancestor. Okay, there was a common ancestor which was a marsupial, and number of these different marsupial species this diversified from a common ancestor. So this is showing you adaptive radiation. All these different, you can say, species of marsupials, they adapted to their own environment. Okay, they developed certain features while they were adapting to their environment, and slowly they become different species. So you can see adaptive radiation is helping in the diversification of the species. New species are evolving over time because they are adapting to their particular environment. And all of these species, they are evolving from a single common ancestor. Now let's talk about adaptive radiation in the placental mammals in the Australia. Okay, earlier we were talking about the marsupials, now we are talking about the placental mammals. Okay, now mammals evolved into varieties of such placental mammals as well, each of which appears to be similar to the corresponding marsupial. For example, placental woman Tasmanian wolf, which is a marsupial. Okay, so what is happening here? These placental mammals, they are similar to the corresponding marsupial, like placental wolf. This is quite similar to Tasmanian wolf, which is a marsupial. Okay, so here two adaptive radiations are occurring together. One in marsupials, another one in the placental mammals. There are two separate adaptive radiations. Okay, clear? So because of this, the placental mammals, they are very similar to the Tasmanian. You can see the placental mammals are similar to the marsupials. Clear? Example is placental wolf is very similar to the Tasmanian wolf. Okay, so these placental mammals, they are also showing adaptive radiations. Clear? So now what is happening here? This is an example of convergent evolution. Clear? Here two adaptive radiations, they are occurring, okay, individually. They are occurring independently. Clear? And because of this, what is happening? The placental mammals, they are very similar to these marsupials. So this is showing you convergent evolution. Clear? What is convergent evolution? Evolution of placental mammals and Australian marsupials. Now they evolved through more than one adaptive radiation. So more than one adaptive gradation is occurring here. One is placental mammal, one in Australian marsupials. Now all of this occurred in an isolated geographical area representing different habitats. Okay, this is clear. So all of this is occurring in the Australian continent. Clear? Both of these are adapting to their environment. Okay, this is considered as convergent evolution. Okay, so here you can see in this image, the placental mammal, they are very similar to the Australian marsupials. So this is an example of convergent evolution. There are two different adaptive gradations are occurring in two different habitats. Okay. So this is a picture showing you convergent evolution of Australian marsupials and the placental mammals. These placental mammals are very similar to the Australian marsupials, like mole and marsupial mole, anteater and numbat, a mouse and marsupial mouse. Okay, we talked about the example of placental wolf and the Tasmanian wolves. These are quite similar. Okay, so one adaptive gradation is occurring in placental mammal, another adaptive gradation occurring in the Australian marsupials. Okay, all of this is occurring in an isolated geographical area which represents different habitat. Okay, now let's talk about the biological evolution. Okay, now evolution by natural selection. This was the core idea of Darwin. So Darwin gave the concept of natural selection. Okay, so evolution by natural selection would have started when cellular forms of life with differences in metabolic capability originated on the earth. Okay, so what they are saying that these cellular life forms means they have cells. They are made up of cells. These cellular life forms, they have different metabolic capability. Okay, so some can metabolize the molecules present in environment very efficiently. Some cells, they are not that efficient in metabolism or in metabolizing the molecules present in the environment. So the cell which are able to better metabolize, they were selected by the nature. Okay, that's why they are saying evolution by natural selection would have started with when cellular life forms on Earth with differences in metabolic capability originated on the Earth. Okay, now natural selection is the essence of Darwinian theory of evolution. So Darwin theory of evolution is based on natural selection. Now according to Darwin, the appearance of new form is linked to the life cycle or the lifespan of that particular organism or species. Clear? So you can say the rate of appearance of new form or evolution is directly proportional to the lifespan of the organism. If the lifespan is less, then what will happen? The evolution will be fast. Evolution of a species will be faster if the lifespan is less. Like in bacteria, its lifespan is very less. It multiplies very fast. So evolution of a new species or appearance of a new life forms will be faster if the lifespan is shorter. Humans, they have a, you can say, lifespan. Okay, it has a lifespan greater than the bacteria, which is like E. coli, which is a bacteria. So evolution of new forms in case of humans will be slow. Okay, so because they have lifespan around, we say 100 years, now it is less than 100 years. Okay. Example is the biological evolution of microbes. So microorganisms, they can evolve very fast because their lifespan is very less. Clear? So what happens when they multiply? There are a lot of variations. Okay, these variations accumulate over generations and they lead to the development of a new species. Let's talk about biological evolution of the microorganisms. So microorganisms that divide very fast have the ability to multiply and become millions of individuals within hours. Okay, microorganisms like bacteria, like yeast, they can divide very fast. Okay, and they can make millions of copies of themselves within hours. Okay, let's understand this within an example. So there is a colony of bacteria. We have named this colony of bacteria as A. This colony is growing on a given medium. Okay, clear? And it has already built-in variation. Okay, means this colony have some variations in it. This variation can arise due to mutations. Okay, clear? Or due to errors during replication. So already some variations are present in this colony of bacteria, which we have labeled as A. Now, then what you did? The composition of the media was changed in which this colony was growing. Yeah. And you can see only a part of this population, say B, can survive under these new conditions. Yeah. So due to some variations, okay, new traits arose. Okay, and these new traits, they gave survival advantage to this population, which we are saying as B, because this was able to survive in the new conditions now. Because we have changed the conditions, we have changed the composition of the media. Okay, so the bacteria which had this variation, these were able to survive. Okay, maybe they were able to better metabolize the changed media. Okay, the rest of the bacteria, they will perish. And the population of these bacteria, which we are saying as B, the population of these bacteria will, you can say, will be more, because they will keep on multiplying. Okay, now this variant population outgrows the other and appears as a new species. Okay, so the appearance of the new species is because of these variations which were present in the original population. These variations helped these individuals to survive the change in the environment, to adapt to the change in the environment. So what is the conclusion? Fitness of B is better than the A under new conditions. Okay, this is very important to write, under new conditions. For microbes, evolution could occur within days because they have a very short lifespan. Okay, so if they have short lifespan, then there are chances that variations will be more, and variations will be accumulated, and they can be formation of a new species. Now, in contrast, evolutionists fish and fowl would require millions of years due to their long lifespan. Similar in humans as well. Now, what is the genetic basis of natural selection? Okay, natural selection and its genetic basis, we are going to talk about this. So, nature selects for fitness. So, individual which is fit, okay, in the changed environment, that will produce more progeny. So, nature selects for fitness. This fitness is based on inherited characteristics. Okay, means the characteristics, they should be inherited in the next generation also. And these characteristics should provide survival advantage. Now, fitness, the end result of ability to adapt and get selected by the nature. So, what is fitness? Fitness is basically ability to adapt and get selected by the nature. Okay, or you can say fitness is the end result of ability to adapt and get selected by the nature. Okay, if the species is able to adapt to the change in the environment, that species will be selected by the nature. So we can say fitness is actually the result of ability to adapt and get selected by the nature. Okay. So these inherited characteristics, we can say that they must have genetic basis. Okay, because they are passed on from one generation to next generation. Like DNA is passed on from one generation to next generation. Genes are passed from one generation to next generation. Okay, so these characteristics are controlled by genes. Okay, so that's why we are saying they have genetic basis. Therefore, selection by nature requires an underlying genetic basis contributing to evolution. Clear? So nature is selecting certain genes which are responsible for particular characteristics. Okay, this is clear. Now let's talk about Lamarck's theory of evolution. Okay, his theory was based on acquired characteristics. Lamarck's theory is known as theory of inheritance of acquired characteristics, also known as Lamarckism. So Lamarck was a French naturalist. He stated that evolution of life forms have occurred but driven by use and disuse of the organs. Okay. Now what does this mean? Clear? We will understand this with an example of you can say elongation of giraffe neck. Okay, so what is the example of Lamarckism? Evolution of giraffe with longer necks. Okay, this is an image showing you Lamarck, and this, you can see these are giraffe with long necks. So how giraffe which exists today had longer necks? This was explained by Lamarck. Okay, his theory was based on disuse and use of the organs. Okay, actually this theory is not well accepted. Okay, let's talk about evolution of giraffe with longer necks. So according to Lamarck, whenever you use an organ, this organ is, you can say, is selected in the next generation. Okay, so increased use of the giraffe neck led to the evolution of longer necks in the giraffe. Okay, how this evolution occurred? Evolution of the longer necks. Now giraffe attempted to forage leaves on tall trees. Okay, so they used to stretch their necks in order to forage the leaf on the tall tree. So they were using their organ, they were using their neck. Okay, so they were using a particular organ, they were stretching it, and this was passed on to the next generation. Okay, so Lamarck said that if you are using a particular organ, then it will be selected. If you are not using that organ, then it will not be selected in the next generation. You will lose that organ. Okay, so this is a kind of acquired character. Okay, you are acquiring that character during the lifetime, and this is being passed on to the next generation also. So acquired character of elongated neck is passed on to the succeeding generation as well. Slowly over the years, the giraffe came to acquire longer necks. Okay. Now nobody believes in this assumption anymore. It was proven that acquired characteristics are not inherited. So what are acquired characteristics? Which are acquired during the lifetime of an organism, and these are not inherited. So Lamarck theory is rejected now. So this is an image showing you Lamarckism. You can see initially this was original short-necked giraffe, which is an ancestor. Now giraffe used to stretch his neck in order to forage leaves on the tall trees. Okay, it is still stretching its neck, and finally this character was passed on to the next generation. The present day giraffe that we see has a longer neck. This was the concept proposed by Lamarck, which is now rejected. Let's talk about Darwinian theory of evolution. Okay, so Darwin gave the concept of natural selection. So Darwin theory of evolution is basically based on two concepts: branching descent and natural selection. Now, what do you mean by branching descent? Okay, so it explains how species evolved from a common ancestor. Okay, So there is a common ancestor and there are descendants of this common ancestor. That why is known as branching descent. Okay, are the descendants of a common ancestor. Okay, these descendants are different species which are adapting to a particular environment. Okay, so like branches of a tree, new species split from an ancestral form. This is what is branching descent. What are the key features of branching descent? The species share a common ancestor and gradually they diverge from this common ancestor. And this creates different species, this creates biodiversity. Okay, clear? Like adaptive radiation in placental mammals and Australian marsupials. Clear? Now let's talk about that nature of evolution, whether it is process or the result of a process. Okay, now living and non-living world. Okay, inanimate and animate world is only the success stories of the evolution. Now we consider evolution as a process when we describe the story of the world. Clear? For description of a story of a life, we treat evolution as a result of a process which is the natural selection. Okay, so we say the species, they have evolved from a common ancestor. Okay, they have slowly adapted to the environment. Okay, so we treat evolution as a result of a process which is natural selection. So still, it's not very clear to us whether to regard evolution and natural selection as a process or end result of an unknown process. Okay, so we are still unclear that evolution and natural process are these processes or are they end result of some unknown process. Now let's talk about Thomas Malthus' works on the populations. So natural selection is based on certain factual observations. According to Thomas Malthus, some examples are, first of all, natural resources, they are limited in the nature. Okay, because natural resources, they are limited, because of this, competition occurs. So Thomas Malthus, he basically said that population stability is unlikely. Okay, because the population, it grows exponentially and the resources are limited. Okay, and he also said the members of a population vary in characteristics, and in fact no individuals are alike. He also said most of the variations are inherited to the next generation. Okay, so based on factual observation, Thomas Malthus postulated that there is overproduction of the population. Means the population is growing exponentially. Their population size will grow exponentially. So there will be overproduction. There will be, you can say, exponential increase in the population. But the resources are always limited. Okay. But in which case there will be exponential growth in the population when the resources are unlimited and when everybody is reproducing maximally. For example, in the case of bacterial population, when you are providing the resources, then what is happening? The bacteria, they grow exponentially. They show exponential growth because they are reproducing maximally. When they will reproduce maximally, when the resources are not limited. But when the resources are limited, then what will happen? There will be no exponential growth. Here, so Thomas Malthus said that the population is growing exponentially, but the resources are limited. So he concluded that the population stability is unlikely because of this factor. Clear? Now, as resources are usually limited, there will be struggle for existence. So population sizes, in reality, they are limited due to competition of the resources, such as food. Now, there is survival of the fittest then. Now, this resulted in survival of only those species or individuals who made better resource utilization over others in the competition. And then this species or these individuals which were able to adapt to the environment, which were able to better utilize the resources, they were selected in the next generation, and there was origin of a new species. Now, new population appeared because of differential survival due to resource limitation. Clear? So, the individual or the species or the population which was able to better utilize the resources, that was selected, that survived, okay, and rest of the individual, they perished. Now let's talk about Darwin's theory over Thomas Malthus. Now the work of Thomas Malthus on population influenced Darwin. According to Darwin, variations are heritable and allow better resource utilization. Okay, which variations are heritable, which allow better resource utilization? These are inherited, these are heritable. Variations enable to reproduce more and leave more progeny. So these variations, they provide survival advantage. They help the species or individual to adapt to the changes in the environment. And these individuals, they are selected and they leave more progeny. And then there is origin of a new species. Over generations, individuals tend to reproduce more progeny with a change in population characteristics. Okay, so the characteristics of the populations are changing because of the variations. Clear? These variations accumulated over generations, and this lead to the appearance of new form of life, and only those variations are selected which give survival advantage. Okay, now let's summarize this entire session. We talked about the adaptive radiations. Okay, so what is the definition of adaptive radiation? A process of evolution where species evolve from a point, means from a common ancestor, and radiate to different habitats. So means there is a common ancestor, and from this common ancestor, different species are radiating because they are adapting to the different habitat. Now, what is the trigger for adaptive radiation? New environment or niche. Whenever it becomes available, then these individuals, they start adapting to this new environment and they form a new species. What is the result? Opportunities for species to diversify, means origin of new species. We talked about the Darwin finches, which is a classical example of adaptive radiation. So Darwin finches, they evolved in the Galapagos Island. Okay, initially the original species was seed eating, which was from the mainland. Then what happened? Okay, how the evolution occurred. So these initial Darwin finches, original species, diversified into different varieties with altered beaks. Now what was the end result? Various species adapted to different food sources and they become insectivorous or vegetarian. Okay, we also talked about our Australian marsupials and placental mammals. Both of them individually or independently adaptive radiations occur. And these two, they are the example of convergent evolution as well. Okay, so marsupials, they evolved from ancestral stock within Australian continent. Placental mammal also, they evolved into different varieties similar to corresponding marsupials. So this is an example of convergent evolution. Okay, what is the common feature? Both exhibit adaptive radiation in the isolated geographical area. Okay, in both of them, adaptive radiation occurred independently. Clear? In an isolated geographical area, and because of this, placental mammals variety, they were similar to corresponding marsupials. So this becomes an example of convergent evolution also. Now we talked about biological evolution also. So biological evolution occurs through natural selection, which is Darwin's theory. Evolution rate is proportion to the lifespan of the organism. If the lifespan is less, then the rate of evolution will be more. Appearance of new forms, you can say they will appear in less time if the lifespan is less. Example is microbes evolve faster due to short life cycle. Okay. Natural selection. We talked about the natural selection also. Clear? We'll talk about the natural selection types also. Okay. So these are disruptive, stabilizing, and diversifying. Okay. We will talk about this stabilizing selection, diversifying selection in detail also later. Now, Malthus' contribution to evolution in theory. Let's talk about this. Okay, first, there is an overproduction. Population grows exponentially if unchecked. Okay, but the resources are always limited. So this leads to struggle for existence, and only the fittest will survive and reproduce. Let's discuss some NCERT-based questions. So Darwin finches are an classical example of what are the options: artificial selection, adaptive radiation, genetic drift, and convergent evolution. What is the correct answer? So let's discuss the answer. Option 1B, adaptive radiation, is the correct answer. Let's have a look at the explanation. So the original Darwin finch, it was seed eating. Okay, this seed eating finch, it evolved into different species with varied beak shapes. Okay, and all of these species, they evolved in a specific geographical area, which is the Galapagos Island. Now this Darwin finches, okay, this is a very good example of adaptive radiation, and it shows diversification of the Darwin finch. Okay, so this shows diversification to occupy different ecological niche. Okay, clear? So what is the trigger for the adaptive radiation? Presence of new environment or new niche. So this also represents evolution radiating from a single point, means there is a single ancestor, and from the single ancestor, you can say different species are being formed. Next question, according to Darwin's theory, the rate of evolution is, what are the options? Same for all organisms, faster in microbes than in larger organisms, slower in microbes than in larger organisms, independent of lifespan. What is the correct answer? Let's have a look at the answer. Answer is option B, faster in microbes than in larger organisms. Let's have a look at the explanation. So rate of evolution is proportional to the life cycle duration. Now, microbes can evolve within days due to rapid reproduction. They can multiply very fast. Larger organisms take millions of years to evolve. Okay, short generation time allows faster adaptation. So this demonstrates relationship between evolution rate and the lifespan. Next question, according to Lamarck's theory of evolution, which statement best explains the development of long necks in the giraffe? Okay, options are: option B, random genetic mutations led to longer necks in the giraffe. Option B, giraffe stretched their necks to reach leaves, and this trait was inherited. Next option is natural selection favored giraffe with longer necks, and option D, God created giraffes with long necks. What is the correct answer? So let's have a look at the answer. Option B is the correct answer here. Giraffes stretched their necks to reach leaves, and this trait was inherited. So Lamarck's theory was based on use and disuse of the organ. So he said the acquired characteristics, they are inherited in the next generation. Okay, so his concept was based on use and disuse. So Lamarck believed that frequent use of organs makes them stronger, while disuse tends to degeneration. He talked about the inheritance of the acquired traits. Acquired traits are traits which are acquired during the lifetime. He proposed that characteristic acquired during an organism lifetime could be passed to the offsprings. Okay, so he talked about the need-based changes. According to Lamarck, organisms develop features based on their needs or the requirement, and these features are inherited in the next generation as well. He talked about progressive evolution. He says that evolution always proceeds from simple to the complex form. And there was environment influence also. Lamarck emphasized that environmental changes force organisms to adapt by developing new characteristics, like in case of giraffe. Okay, long necks in giraffe. So there was an environmental change. Now the leaves, they were present on very tall trees. Yeah, so this forced the giraffe to stretch its neck and to reach the leaves. Now let's discuss some interesting questions that will enhance your critical thinking ability. First question is, Darwin finch is a famous example of adaptive radiation. Yet the evolution occurred in a relatively small geographical area. How did such diverse species emerge in such a limited space? Next question, if you were to discover a new island with unique species, how would you determine whether adaptive radiation had occurred there? Next one, Lamarck suggests giraffe evolved long necks through stretching, while Darwin proposed natural selection of genetic variation. Why was Darwin's explanation more scientifically sound? Okay, so with this, we have discussed the theory. Now let's discuss DPP related to these topics. So let's have a look at the first question. So first question is, according to Darwinian theory, which of the following is the key concept? Okay, we're talking about the theory given by Darwin. Okay. First is use and disuse of organs. Second is branching descent. Third one is inheritance of acquired characteristic. And fourth one is all of the above. What is the correct answer? The option number B is the correct answer. Branching descent. So Darwin's theory, it is based on branching descent and natural selection. Okay. So what does branching descent means? Means there is a single ancestor, and from the single ancestor, number of species have evolved. Okay, these are the descendants of that common ancestor. Next one, if the bacterial colony with variation in metabolic capability, okay, a change in medium composition leads to option number A, all bacteria adapting equally. Next is only variant B surviving and outgrowing others. Next is immediate extinction of the colony, and option number D is increased mutation rate in all bacteria. What is the correct answer? Option number B is the correct answer here. See, this bacterial colony has already built-in variation in metabolic capability. So if you change the composition of the media, then the bacteria which are able to better utilize the new media, that will be selected. Okay, so say variant B, which had this inbuilt variation, okay, that will survive and that will outgrow the other bacteria. Okay, because it is able to efficiently use the new media. Next one, which factor is critical for natural selection according to Darwin? Here, so options are limited natural resources. Second is seasonal population fluctuation. Option number C is non-inherited variation. Option number D is symbiotic relationship. What is the correct answer? Okay, option number A is the correct answer. Limited natural resources. So when the natural resources are limited, there will be competition. Okay, then there will be, when there is competition, then there will be struggle for existence. There will be survival for the fittest. Okay, so nature will select that species or organism that is able to adapt to the change in the environment, or which is able to better utilize the resources. Next one, why does evolution appear faster in bacteria compared to fish? Options are bacteria have shorter lifespan. Option B, fish have more genetic variation. Option number C, bacteria reproduce sexually. And option number D, fish are more complex organism. What is the correct answer? The option number A will be the correct answer. Bacteria have shorter lifespan. Okay, that's why they evolve faster. Bacteria can multiply very quickly. Okay, so they keep on multiplying and the variations keep on accumulating, and it can lead to development of new forms. Okay, evolution of a new species. Next one, Lamarck's theory of evolution is discredited because it proposed natural selection, branching descent, inheritance of acquired characteristics, and genetic mutations. What is the correct answer? See, option number C will be the correct answer here. So Lamarck theory or Lamarckism, it was based on inheritance of acquired characteristic. Means the characteristic which is acquired during the lifetime, they are inherited to the next generation as well. So this theory has been rejected now. Okay. So with this, we have discussed the DPP also. Okay. All our answers are correct. So with this, we end this session. I hope the session was quite knowledgeable for you. We'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.